Hey everybody, Christopher Odd here, and today in partnership with 2K and Marvel, we're putting together a beginner's tips video for those of you who maybe have never played turn-based games, card games, or any strategy games for that matter. Maybe you heard, hey, there's a new Marvel game, what's this all about? Oh, it's a strategy game. That feels like it could be intimidating. I'm here to help you with that feeling. Marvel's Midnight Suns, first and foremost, is a very approachable game. You can play it on multiple different difficulties. And I'm confident that regardless of your skill level, you can enjoy it. That's not to say that the game is easy by any stretch of the imagination. You will be challenged, but hopefully with the tips that we talk about in today's video, I'm going to help you get through those challenges a little bit easier. If you do plan to get the game, or if you already own it, just know that the in-game tutorial and gradual introduction of mechanics is really phenomenal and well implemented, designed for a new player. You're going to learn everything you need to know when you need to know it. What I want to do today is take you through a mission every turn and explain the rules and mechanics of the game, articulate to you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and hopefully at the end of the video, you're going to have the confidence that you need to just jump into a strategy game like Marvel's Midnight Suns. So, first up, this is our mission today. We've got to destroy the device. There's a Hydra containment device that's been located. Destroy and confiscate whatever is inside. Now, along on this mission, we are bringing Doctor Strange because he's required, but we're also going to bring the Hunter. This is our customizable superhero that you can make look however you want and mostly fight however you want, depending on different choices that you make and cards that you unlock. And then we're also bringing good old Iron Man. He's going to help us with quite a few things. We do have a later video planned for more in-depth advanced strategies. We'll talk about team composition and deck building and stuff like that. But for now, we're going to try and keep it very simple, okay? So let's get in here, and I'm going to explain everything you need to know. Okay, so when we join a combat mission in Midnight Suns, this is generally what you're going to be presented with. You're going to have a batch of enemies, you may have some objectives, and of course, you're going to have your own heroes that you brought to the mission. I'm just going to draw your attention up to the objectives in the top left of the screen. Our objective here is to destroy devices. We have 2 rift charges remaining. These are the rift charges in the upper right corner here, in the upper left corner in the back. You'll notice this one is being protected by a Hydra shield guard. That's a problem. We're going to have to figure out how we deal with that. Speaking of Hydra, I'm just going to take a look at our tactics mode here, which shows their health numbers. And you'll notice some of them don't even have health bars or health numbers at all. These are called minions, so we have 2 of them on the field right now. These guys will get knocked out upon taking any damage whatsoever. And there's some really interesting mechanics in Midnight Suns that help us deal with those guys effectively without wasting some of our card plays on lower level enemies. Speaking of card plays, let's go down to the bottom right of the screen. These are the core mechanics in Midnight Suns that you need to understand to be successful. First up, we've got 3 card plays per turn. Now, this can change and will change, I'll show you that today, based on which heroes you have. Some of them have abilities that can grant you more card plays. We also have things called redraws. So twice per turn, you can redraw an ability that you may not want, or because we have Iron Man, one of his kind of shticks or one of his things is that he can redraw certain Iron Man cards to add extra mechanics to those. We'll talk about that in a second. We also have 1 move per turn. Again, there's combat items or character abilities that can add moves that you'll unlock later on. And then you have combat items. We have 1 here. You'll unlock more slots as you go throughout the game. This combat item is an armor-piercing charm. This can apply to vulnerable to an enemy with block. Vulnerable makes them take increased damage. Block is a blue bar above their health bar that absorbs damage before impacting their health. And it's free, which means it doesn't cost a card play. The to part of it, applying to vulnerable, means that that status effect is going to be on them for 2 turns. Okay? So we'll get into that in a bit as well. So first up, I think a general safe approach is dealing with your minions whenever possible. Those guys are best dealt with using a card that has the quick mechanic. So, for example, Quick Blast. It has quick, which means if you KO an enemy with that, you're going to get a card play back. It's a really efficient way of dealing with the minions. That said, I'm hopeful that we could find a card with quick and knockback. All three of our heroes have that. And this is a very basic starting deck that a lot of you guys would see very early into the game. Not a lot of crazy upgrades, very achievable for everyone. And I'm hoping that if we do some redraws, we can get that into our hand. So I am going to redraw Blessing of Vishanti because I don't really need to buff damage on our cards right now. Let's ditch that one. Okay, so we've drawn a hero card. This actually brings up a really good topic to talk about. Hero cards are very powerful, but they're very expensive. So you'll notice in the top left of this card, this 4, that's the amount of heroism that it costs to play that card. Heroism is generated in the bottom right here. You'll see this build up as we play cards. And for every attack card, you'll see in the bottom left, it generates +1 heroism. Skill cards, like Mark Target, for example, can add +2 heroism. And you use these attacks and skills to build up heroism to then spend on your more powerful cards, like this hero combo. That said, I don't really have a good use for this hero combo yet. It's too expensive to play, and I need to go through a bunch of my other stuff before this will be that useful. So I'm gonna actually redraw this, and we'll see what we get off of that. Now we're talking. Winds of Watum. Okay. So this is kind of one of the things at Midnight Suns that if you've prepared your deck in advance, you have a rough idea of what cards could be coming down the pipe. And we got really lucky here, but I have 2 Winds of Watum in my overall deck, so our chances to draw it were pretty decent. So Winds of Watum, the reason I want this is because we have a really good knockback and quick setup here. You'll see knockback, when we target an enemy, we can then push them into objects or other enemies. I like to think of combat in Midnight Suns like a bit of a pool table, if you will. You're always trying to knock people around into different things to maximize your damage and maximize your efficiency. So what's cool about this is we can knock this minion into the other Hydra. Not only is that going to knock out the minion and give us our card play refund, but it's also going to impart some damage on the enemy behind him. So let's begin.
Leave some for the rest of us.
So you can see our card play was refunded, and in the bottom right, we still have 3 available. Very nice. Now let's just take a look at all of our other cards right now. We've got Quick Blast from Iron Man. This has the quick mechanic, and if we had any redraws left, we could redraw this card and add knockback. This won't discard it because it's Iron Man's kind of speciality. This will just add a new mechanic by spending a redraw on that card. It's also dealing 7 damage. Sometimes cards with knockback and quick, like we saw in Winds of Watum, won't have damage, so you'll need to knock the enemy into something to get that damage to trigger. But Quick Blast has 7 damage. He also just has regular blast with knockback on it. It doesn't have quick, but you can knock enemies into each other with this, and this is also 7 damage. We have another copy of Quick Blast. We have Mark Target, which can apply 2 marked and 2 vulnerable. Marked makes it so that regardless of how the enemy is KO'd, you will refund that card play, and you're not reliant on the quick mechanic. Vulnerable makes them take more damage, so this is a pretty powerful card. If we were to redraw this later, we could also add the enemies around the unit that we're targeting, gain the 2 marked as well, so that's very powerful. Agamotto's Gaze, an extremely powerful early game card. This is going to draw the last 2 attacks that you played, and you start the next turn with 4 card plays. So let's do this. We're gonna try and take care of this other minion over here, and we have 2 Quick Blast cards, so one of them we'll use on this minion. I also want to point out, if you notice that green circle right in the middle of the screen, that's going to be where Iron Man lands after his attack is done. This is really important in Midnight Suns because you can save using up your team's moves by positioning correctly off of your attacks. So let's go ahead and quick blast this minion. We've now played 2 abilities, and we still have 3 card plays left. Now, what this has done, this has put us in a really good position. If we wanted to, we could vault over this set of pallets, and we could knock this guy, or if we were to move, we can knock somebody else. But you see that cone? This is anybody in here we can target. Now, I'm over-explaining because I want you guys to understand everything as we go here, and then as the turns progress, I'll probably move a little bit faster. You may also notice that on some enemies, when you target them, there's this card that pops out. You can kind of see this card hovering next to them, very small, where my also small mouse cursor is. But if you target that enemy, or if you KO that enemy, you will then get that card. So this would give us weak point. So if the target is an object, you can apply infinite vulnerable. That is very good for this type of mission. And this one here, if the target's an object, you can just add extra damage to it at the cost of 0 heroism. Also quite powerful. So I think what I'm going to do here, because I don't want to necessarily move from here, I'm gonna save our marked target until I can redraw it to make it more powerful. But what I am going to do is utilize our good positioning, and we're going to do a bunch of damage to this Hydra Elite. So when you're doing environmental attacks, you'll notice when you hover on it, there's a damage number of 30, but then there's a heroism cost. The heroism for environmental attacks can vary. It's usually 1, sometimes 2, depending on what the object is. But we're going to vault over here using 1 of our heroism, so pay attention to our heroism in the bottom right. And we're going to do some damage to this Hydra. We have now done 3 things on this turn without spending any of our card plays. That is very nice. It's a pretty good start for us, and I'm pretty happy with how this is going. Now we have some decisions to make. We can't make these any more powerful. These are kind of basic attacks, so we can deal 7 damage. We will be able to actually KO this guy if we play both of our cards on him. I could do a knockback first, because we'll do the 7, but he's also going to take damage from being knocked into an object. And then what I could do is do Quick Blast, which will KO him, and that'll be another refunded card play. So let's go ahead and do that.
Sure, why not?
So now he's down to 2 health, and we can use our Quick Blast to take him out. This is going to refund our card play, and it's going to get us this mission card of Break. So if the target's an object, we deal extra damage, which we will definitely use against the objects that we have out here. So let's take him out. We played a quick card, which means we get the card play refunded. And now we've done what? 5 things, and we still have 2 card plays. This is a very good opener, I would say. Things are going pretty well. Now, I think what we'll do next is play Agamotto's Gaze. This is going to draw our last 2 attack cards played. It's going to generate 2 heroism for us, and we're going to start the next turn with 4 card plays. So, let's go ahead and do that.
Watch closely. The light
Very
shines
nice.
on the most dutiful.
And there's a couple of things we could do here. If you remember, we have a combat item called Armor Piercing Charm, where we can apply 2 vulnerable to an enemy with block. Now, there's only one enemy with block here, okay? The problem is we don't have a lot of card plays to follow up on that damage, and because it's adding 2 turns worth, we're kind of wasting that turn if we're not going to be following up on all of that immediately. Now, I think for the rest of this turn, what we'll probably end up doing is just blasting someone. And can I knock him into anything? No. What about you? Yeah, okay, we could take a look at this. So, I think what we'll do is we'll blast this Hydra Elite into one of these generators. You'll see this little lightning icon. This is going to stun them, and they're going to be unable to do a move on their turn, which is pretty powerful. And it's also going to impart the 9 damage plus the damage he'll take from hitting that thing. And then that could be our last card for this turn, which I think is pretty good. So let's go ahead and do that. So he is now stunned and unable to do his move. Before I pass it to the enemy, you may notice that when you look at these enemy health bars, there's a hero icon beside it. Here we have the Hunter icon to the left. Here we have the Iron Man icon to the left. And here we now have a dimmed Hunter icon to the left. This is telling you who the enemies are going to attack. And you can use this in your decision making so that you prioritize your targets a little bit better. The other thing I would encourage you to do is at the end of every turn, look at your heroism. Do you have a lot of it, like we do right now? Yes. We are going to use that heroism to do some environmental damage if possible. So here's an example where we could come over here and use this box for 1 heroism to then slam it down on this Hydra officer. That's a pretty good option. I think what I'm going to do first, though, is actually use one of our moves. Who do we want to do this? Okay, so I'm kind of thinking ahead here. I'm going to move the Hunter back into this area. And when you start to move, you can see all of the different cones come into play. These are showing you the environment interactables that you can choose to use or not. And depending on where you position, where you're able to target those interactables. So what I really want to do is use this box in front of us to push it into this enemy. And I think this is fine. Let's put the Hunter here. Now, you'll notice when we target this, this is costing 2 heroism. I can push him, and depending on how I orient it, I can knock him into that other box back there if I want to, which I do because I want him to take more damage. If we're thinking ahead, which I would encourage you to do, you may want to consider what your options are before you initiate certain moves like this. So this is going to move him back here. Now, we initially looked at Iron Man potentially using this box to damage this Hydra officer. We also have a box here, and he is not... Well, he is actually just in that circle. So what I could do is I could spend a heroism on each of these boxes to hit him, and I could spend 2 heroism to then kick him into this other box back here, which I think is going to be well worth it because he's got a lot of health to chew through. So you don't have to use a move on these if you target them. You can... Your hero will just go over and do the attack without consuming a move. Some of them, like these slide objectives, you have to go behind them. And so they can be a little bit different. Let's bring Iron Man over here to throw this box. That's going to cost us 1 heroism. But we've done such a good job of building heroism that we have the extra to spend. Then, I'll tell you what, let's bring Doctor Strange, just for some variety, to throw this box. And then lastly, we can now kick this box with the hunter, and I'm going to angle it in such a way where he is not only going to take the damage from kicking the box, but he's going to take extra damage from hitting the other box in the environment. This was all on turn 1, I want to point out, and that is a pretty effective first turn, I would say. I'm happy with how that's gone. Let's see what happens in the next turn. We're going to let the enemies act. He's going to attack the hunter. The shield guard is going to attack Iron Man, and this guy is stunned, so he will not be acting. Let's end our turn.
Hydra's in control of the situation.
No retreat. That was your one chance.
Okay, so now we have our own status effects to deal with. Now, on most turns, Hydra will bring in reinforcements to keep the battle challenging. Okay, so we're dazed. It's nice that these tutorials are actually popping here, because then I can just explain it in game terms. The other heroes must take a number of actions before the dazed effect wears off. So let's take a look.
Will not last much longer at this rate.
Because of his skill card that we played on the first turn, we now have 4 card plays. That's why you see that popping up. Iron Man's dazed with a 1 beside it. That means that after 1 card is played, regardless of who plays it, he will then be able to act. The hunter is vulnerable, which means he's going to take increased damage from incoming attacks now. The important thing to pay attention to there is who's targeting the hunter. So this Hydra Elite is targeting them. This Hydra Officer is targeting them. So that's something we need to keep in mind. We have a new minion that's come in. It's not too bad. However, we only have 1 quick card, and it's on our unit that can't act. So we have to adjust our play accordingly. What new cards did we get? We got Blessing of Vishanti. So this is a skill card that gives all of the other damage-dealing hero cards in our hand extra damage until they've either been played or discarded. We have the Axe of Angaramus, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but this will apply damage and 2 weak, which reduces the offense of the hero or of the enemy that is impacted. Doctor Strange also has a mechanic called Enhanced, where if you spend more heroism on the card, it can grant additional effects. And in this case, it will grant extra damage, okay? We also picked up the Whip card from the Hunter. This is a neat card. It costs 1 heroism, but you can forceful knock back an enemy in any direction at all. So you can just fling them in any which way, which is kind of nice. So let me think about how I want to play this turn, and then I'll try to execute that plan. Okay, so after thinking about it a little bit and coming up with a little bit of a plan, I'm going to redraw Blessing of Vishanti here, and let's see if that provides us with any additional options. We did get a healing card, which is okay. We have some healing that we could do here, although I don't think we're in danger of being KO'd as long as we can take care of one of these enemies here. So I may want to hold that for now, but let's just see how the rest of the turn goes, and we'll try to make a judgment from there. First thing we could do... You know what, actually? I changed my mind. I'm going to redraw that and see if we get anything else. Okay, we got 2 whip cards. I think this is fine. What I'd like to have is this marked target available, but we'll make this work in our own way, hopefully. So what I'm going to start by doing, I'm not going to worry about this minion right now. We can take care of him with that quick blast. I'm going to start throwing this guy over here. And the reason I'm going to do that is to get those guys grouped up into a smaller area, and then we can more easily knock them into each other. Before I do that, though, let's go ahead and throw on our armor-piercing charm. This is our combat item that only is usable on enemies with block, like this shield guard here. This is going to apply 2 vulnerable, which means he's going to take increased damage. So before we start damaging him, we're going to throw this over here. Now, the downside of whip is, yes, it's a forceful knockback, and I can throw people around wherever I want, but it's going to discard a random card. What's that going to be? I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't impact my plan too much, but it could.
Your fate is sealed. Requesting medevac. Blade told me to mention your mother.
So his daze is now removed. That is actually great. It removed the other whip, which I think is fine. So now we have a couple of other options here. I've got 3 card plays available, and I've got 4 cards, but I have 1 with quick. So in this scenario, I am going to just take out this minion over here.
What are the qualifications to be a Hydra officer? I'd have guessed a warm body, but I think Lilith solved that too.
I would have loved to have been able to redraw marked target so that I could add nearby enemies gaining marked as well, but I think in this situation, I'll probably just target this unit, and that way we can probably KO them with Axe of Ignoramus. I think that's the way we want to go. We will actually be up to 4 heroism, so with 44 damage, I can KO this unit. I am vulnerable here, which means I'm going to take extra damage from this guy. I could knock out either one, but this one gives me the weak point mission card, and the reason that that's nice is because the infinite vulnerable on an object means that we can take the objects down really quickly when we start targeting them. So here's what we'll do. Instead of putting this on the Hydra officer, we are going to apply 2 marked and 2 vulnerable to this guy. That's going to generate the extra heroism that I'll need. I actually probably don't even need the extra heroism on Axe of Ignoramus here because of the vulnerable. However, that's what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And what's cool about this will actually refund us a card play, which doesn't really matter because I don't even have enough cards in my hand right now to be able to do this. But because we're gaining the mission card, that'll allow me to actually play both. I hope that makes sense. I only realized that as I was explaining it. You'll notice the game can be very complex.
Sometimes I even impress myself.
And I really hope that I am sharing with you guys my thought process cleanly enough so that you fully are able to follow along. And if I'm not, if you have any questions, feel free to ask because I'd be more than happy to clarify some things. So I've got 2 card plays left. Both of them are mission cards. We're going to apply weak point over here because it's not being blocked. Okay, it's also going to deal damage, which is cool. And then our follow-up mission card should take care of it. So now it's going to take additional damage from any further attacks. This break card should actually finish it off. Yeah. So it would initially deal 23 damage. It's got 30 health left, but because it's vulnerable, it's taking an additional 50%. All right. So we're getting close to the end of our turn. What's going to happen? This Hydra Shield Guard is going to attack Doctor Strange, and this Hydra Officer is going to attack our vulnerable Hunter. So what we could look to do is position our guys near some type of environmental objects to use on the next round. And I think that's not a bad idea. Let's look at the Hunter and bring them just over in this vicinity. And that way, depending on where the Hydra unit actually finishes their attack, we can use one of the 3 heroes to probably get a free slide thing here if we generate enough heroism. This is just, I'm just employing my best guess as to what we could possibly do on the next round. Let's see what happens.
The battlefield is ours.
Okay, so he's reapplied vulnerable.
Just wait until it's my turn.
We took a lot of damage. They're going to send in some
Guess
reinforcements.
we're not done yet.
It's actually a pretty decent amount of them. Okay.
I can only
One
endure
minion
so
came
much.
in. Okay, so for this turn, I actually went through it and used a combination of quick slash blast, quick slash plus, and a couple of other things that came up when I was redrawing. But then I didn't use something that I really want to show called Surgical Strike. A, it looks cool. B, it's got a new mechanic that we haven't talked about yet, so I'm going to try to work that into my turn here. And even though it may not be suboptimal, depends on how our redraws and stuff go, I still think it's a good mechanic to learn. It's called Chain. The way it works is that you select multiple targets or the same target multiple times, and you deal that 22 damage each time that you're attacking the target. For Iron Man, if we get more Iron Man cards in our hand, then his chain number will increase, and it kind of plays into his whole ego a little bit. But that's what I love about the game. There's a lot of personality infused into just card abilities and stuff. When we're looking at this, there's a couple of things we need to consider for this turn. Number one, our objective, obviously. We still need to destroy that device ASAP. As soon as that device is done, we are happy. Also, 2 enemies are targeting Strange, 2 enemies are targeting Iron Man, and only 1 enemy, a minion, is targeting the Hunter. Yes, the Hunter is low at 11 health. Yes, the Hunter is vulnerable. However, if we deal with that 1 minion, we don't have to worry about the Hunter this turn. So, what I'm going to do is redraw that card. And that's helpful because at buff Surgical Strike, which is something I want to try and work in here, I do need to build up to 3 heroism to do Surgical Strike, or to play Surgical Strike. And we could do that with playing Marked Target for 2 and then any of our other attacks. But then if we play Marked Target, we're going to have fewer Iron Man cards, so we'll only get to chain twice. Interesting. So we have some decisions to make. First of all, let's do this. We've got Quick Slash Plus. Let's use the Hunter to come in, take care of that minion. And we could actually, this is one cool mechanic that goes past this guarding thing. So you'll notice that they're protecting this object. You can use environmental or knockback attacks to target behind them and get damage on that even though it's protected. So it can't be directly targeted, but you can launch things into it, which is kind of cool. Or, because this unit's vulnerable still, I think we want to put damage there and get through that block so that we can more efficiently target this thing. So let's start with that. The Hunter is leveled up. You'll notice when this happens, they get health and offensive boosts right away, so they deal more damage. They have more health, which is obviously quite good. There's other character stats, but we don't need to get into that for this video. We have 3 card plays left. Couple of things we could do. I could play 2 slash cards. That would get me the heroism needed for Surgical Strike, and then I could chain 3. Or I could do a marked target, applying marked and vulnerable, which, if KO'd, would give us card play back. Maybe what I do here, actually, is play marked target on this unit. And then we have the heroism for Surgical Strike. They would also be vulnerable. So 1 or 2 attacks there and an attack over here, and we would get a card play back. Could be kind of cool. Let's do it. These are the tough decisions that you kind of need to make all the time. And we're going to do that here.
Here we go. That will be our focus then.
Okay.
Who designed your armor? 'Cause it looks like
Now Dazed is removed. So we have an option here, actually, even further still. What I could do is... I don't really want to play Blast, because then my chain is really useless on Surgical Strike. But what I could do is knock back these 2 into each other, and then play Surgical Strike. And I think that would guarantee, because they're both vulnerable, they're also going to take a lot more damage. So let's do it like this. Hunter, I'm going to move you, let's say, here. Because we need the knockback to line up. Let's do like so.
I know that wasn't your signature move.
And then we're going to play Surgical Strike. It's only a chain of 2 here, but it's going to be enough to KO this guy, which will refund the card play. And it'll get through the shield on the shield guard. So let's go ahead and do that.
Pissed me off.
Looks amazing. Feels amazing. Is amazing. Levels up on top of it, because why not? Now that thing is out in the open, okay? So what's going to happen next? Well, Iron Man's going to take a strong attack from the shield guard. He's going to take an attack from this elite back here, and the officer is going to target Strange. I only have Quick Slash or Blast available. I could redraw to add Forceful here, but I don't know if that's that good. What I'm going to do is redraw Quick Slash. Okay, Axe of Ignoramus. This could be very helpful for potentially dealing with this. If we can enhance it with 4 Heroism next turn, that would take it to 54 damage, which is enough to take this out. So, here's what I'm going to do. Actually, we're going to even lower it a bit more now. We're going to Blast here with Knockback.
This should be good.
Because we have vulnerable status on this enemy, I am trying to constantly think, like, I don't want to apply a status and then not follow up on it, because it feels like a bit wasteful. But I think that's pretty good for this turn.
Hydra's in control of the situation.
No retreat. I'll return the favor in time.
Okay, so slow is new. We are stunned. A full stun, not a daze. That's pretty devastating.
You know what to do.
And now this guy is overloaded. Okay, we have some problems. Let me explain them to you.
Choose your aid.
Number 1, Iron Man is stunned. We saw an earlier enemy unit become stunned. Now we are stunned and unable to act at all until the end of the turn. If we could impart some damage on Iron Man, then we could remove that stun, which is something you want to consider. However, we don't have any Iron Man cards in our hand, so that's cool. This guy is going to blow up at the start of the enemy turn. So enemies or our allies that are in this circle are going to take damage. If we knock enemies into this circle, they will take damage. So that's something we could play around with. He is a minion, which means we could just get rid of him with Quick Slash if we wanted. What I'm looking at is probably playing Blessing of Vishanti. If we just look at our main goal here is to destroy the rift, right? This is something that can happen a lot in Midnight Suns. Is you might get overwhelmed and potentially distracted from your objective. That is always the most important thing. So let's see if we can buff this enough. Now, he is slow, which means heroic cards that Doctor Strange plays cost 1 more heroism to use, which is potentially impacting here, but I still think we can get this done. We're going to play Blessing of Vishanti for the 2 heroism. Okay.
This should aid me in my fight.
Axe of Ignoramus is up to 36. This is fine, but I need it to go to 5 so we get the extra damage to destroy this device. Or do we? Or do we? That's a good question. What I could do is something like Slash, where I'm pushing this unit into the objective. They're taking some damage, and Axe of Ignoramus could probably finish it off. The other option is doing just a quick attack here, which I think is best. This is probably the safer option just to get rid of this minion, because I don't have a lot of enemies around here. It doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to knock people into this circle right now. And I feel like this will also get us the Axe of Ignoramus buff that we want and give us a card play back.
Hail that.
So now with 5 heroism, let's target the device.
Now.
Another Hydra operation.
And there you go.
I'll never get tired of hearing that.
Now, in some missions, you will have enemies that come in after you destroy the objectives. Destroy the device ones are not like that. 3 out of 3 rating. Pretty happy about it. We are playing on Heroic 3 difficulty. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we are playing at a bit of a higher difficulty. When you begin, I would probably recommend playing on, well, you're only going to have normal. But play on these difficulties that are early in the campaign for longer to familiarize yourself with the structure of combat and the game. When you earn a higher mission rating, that goes towards unlocking higher difficulties. You get more gloss that you can use in the Abbey to buy stuff. And I guess if you've never seen anything about this game, what you're going to do when you go back to the Abbey is you're going to turn in artifacts and do research with Doctor Strange. You're going to take your gamma coils to Iron Man and get new abilities, or use copies of those to upgrade current abilities. Then you're going to go and talk to Blade in the yard so you can spar with somebody and upgrade your cards. I would encourage you, too, to just explore the Abbey as much as you can. There's a lot of mysteries in here, a lot of cool stuff, but this is all for another video, which I do have coming, don't worry. I really hope that this served as just a beginner's guide. I know there was a lot of mechanics that we covered, but I just wanted to do so in a way that was very cleanly laid out and easy to follow. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, and both myself and Marvel's Midnight Suns will be looking at that to try and answer you appropriately. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks to Marvel and 2K for working with me on this video. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Marvel's Midnight Suns available December 2nd. You can pre-order it now. I'll have links in the description, so check that out. My channel is Christopher Odd on YouTube. I would love to see you over there. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.